بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم In the name of God, the beneficent, the merciful. O mankind, we created you from a single pair of a male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes, that ye may know each other, not that ye may despise each other. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is he who is the most righteous of you. And Allah has full knowledge and is well acquainted with all things. O mankind, we created you from a single pair of a male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes, that ye may know each other, that ye may know each other, not that ye may despise each other. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is he who is the most righteous of you. And Allah and God and Allah has full knowledge and is well acquainted with all things. Know ye, not despise ye. Know ye. Amen. Ya
In the words of the Reverend Marnie Harmony, we whose journeys are always beginning, we whose mission always awaits us, we whose visions are bent on loving, we gather together here.
We gather as a community drawn together out of common need, each toting our own baggage and anxieties and fears, treasures, and dreams.
We gather together seeking meaning, yearning to understand life in all its dimensions, as it challenges and expands, as it burdens, as it consoles and heals.
We gather then, unbounded but close. We gather thirsting. We gather seeking peace. We gather drawn to our source, to worship.
Good morning, everyone. Those here and those online, welcome, welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Abhijana Manchi. I go by pronouns he, him, and I'm one of the ministers serving this religious community.
Buenos dias. I am the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin, one of your ministers. My pronouns are she or ella. And if you're new with us this morning, I hope that you will let us know in the chat, or if you're here in person, if you could raise your hand. If you're joining us online and you're new, we invite you to fill out the newcomer form in the chat.
Whether you are joining us today for the first time or have been with us for a lifetime, whether you're joining us in person or online, you are welcome here.
Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your beliefs, gender identity and expression, immigration status, or disability, you are welcome here.
Thank you for taking a chance and taking a risk to worship with us today. You have been attending for a while and are interested in joining our religious community, please reach out to our membership coordinator, Nicole Kazi.
Our pastoral visitors are an extension of the ministry team. They're available in the chat today to support you, and Kathleen Holmay is also here near the Joys and Sorrows candles. I have just a few announcements, and the first is welcome Cedar Lane leadership to the sanctuary today. You are board members and committee members, pastoral visitors, ushers, greeters, ministry team leaders, ministry team members, faith formation and family ministry leaders, ushers and greeters, and AV team members. Shout out to the AV team. It is so great to see everyone here today and to see everyone online. I hope to see everyone who is available at 3 p.m. today, masked in the courtyard for the blessing of the backpacks. And for those physically present today, we want you to know that the restrooms are open, but please do use them one at a time and follow the hand washing and masking guidelines. And we don't have coffee hour today, but we are thinking about different coffee hour solutions for our in-person folks in the weeks to come. And of course, there's always Zoom coffee hour right after the service.
Thank you, Katie. Just remember what you were taught in kindergarten, and that will serve us all well today. As we enter this time of reflection and remembrance, connection and community, celebration, we acknowledge that we gather as Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church on the traditional land of the Nacotchtank people from which the name Anacostia was derived. They were part of the Piscataway, which was a group of tribes. We honor that the indigenous people of this land were here before us and are here with us now and will continue to be with us as we look forward toward the future. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have protected it through the generations.
We remember those who were enslaved and worked this land without choice or reward. We remember all who've gone before, whose vision and labor helped create and sustain this religious community. In this spirit we gather, in this spirit we begin. Let us greet and welcome each other. Lighting our chalice today are Bob Essink, our Board of Trustees President-elect, and his wife, Ginger Essink, one of our membership team members. I invite you to rise in body or spirit to say the words of our chalice lighting and to share in the chat where you're lighting your chalice from. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our power to seek with honesty, to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, to serve the spirit of justice in the fullness of community. We now invite you to raise your inside voices in spirit only as we are present to hymn number 159. You may be seated.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Today I want to tell you the story of one of my personal heroes, Malala Yousafzai. And I thought, what better way to tell her story than in her own words? So I'm going to share a book, a children's book that she wrote that tells her story in a way that you can truly see and hear her own humility, her own sense of humbleness, as she tries to change the world. Malala's magic pen. Do you believe in magic? When I was younger, I used to watch a TV show about a boy who had a magic pencil. If he was hungry, he drew a bowl of curry and it appeared. If he and his friends were in danger, he drew a police officer. The boy was a little hero, always protecting people who needed help. How I wanted a magic pencil too. If I had a magic pencil, I would use it to put a lock on my door so my brothers couldn't bother me, stop time so I could sleep an extra hour every morning, and erase the smell of the trash dump near our house. And I would use it to make other people happy. I would draw the most beautiful dresses in the world for my mother, the best buildings in the valley for my father so that he could open as many schools where children would study for free, a proper ball so my brothers and I would no longer have to play with old socks stuffed with rubbish. Every night before I went to bed, I wished for that magic pencil of my own. And every morning I would wake up and check my cupboard, but the magic pencil was never there. One day, I was throwing away potato peels and eggshells in the dump. I was wrinkling my nose, swatting away flies, and making sure I didn't step on anything dirty in my nice shoes, when I saw a girl about my age sorting trash into piles. Nearby, boys were fishing for metal scraps using magnets on string. When my father returned home from work, I told him what I'd seen. It made him sad. Abba, I said. Yes, Johnny, he said back. I always liked it when he called me dear one. Why haven't I seen that girl in my class? Because, he said. But he didn't finish right away. Because, Johnny, in our country, not everyone sends their daughters to school, and some children must work to support their families. Those boys will sell the metal scraps they find. If they went to school, their families would go hungry. School was my favorite place, but I had never considered myself lucky to be able to go. My father had always said, Malala will live free as a bird. Now I wondered how free I would truly be. That night I thought about families who didn't have enough food, and the girl who couldn't go to school, and even about how when I was older, I would be expected to cook and clean for my brothers, because where I came from, many girls weren't allowed to become what they dreamed of. I knew that if I had a magic pencil, I would use it to draw a better world, a peaceful world. First, I would erase war, poverty, and hunger, and then I would draw girls and boys together as equals. Over the next few years, instead of wishing for a magic pencil every night, I worked hard in school every day. I wanted to be one of the top students in my class. But soon, powerful and dangerous men declared that girls were forbidden from attending school. They walked the streets of our city now. They carried weapons. One girl stopped coming to school. Abba, where are all the students? They don't feel safe here anymore, Johnny. How could a few men stop all the girls in our valley from going to school? If more people knew what was happening to us, I thought, they might help. Wishing wasn't enough. Someone needed to speak out. Why not me? I wrote about what it felt like to be scared to walk to school and how some of my friends had moved away because of the threat they faced in our city. I wrote about how much I loved school and how proud I was of my uniform. Once I started writing, I didn't stop. I wrote speeches and I traveled around my country sharing my story. I even talked to a reporter from a famous international newspaper. People actually wanted to learn about my life. I spoke for all the girls in my valley who couldn't speak for themselves. My voice became so powerful that the dangerous men tried to silence me, but they failed. And now my voice is louder than ever, louder because people have joined me, and together we make a chorus standing up for what we believe. We raise our voices for those in need, help people in danger, even if they are an ocean away. Think of the world as a family. Do you still believe in magic? I do. I wrote alone in my room, but people all over the world were reading my story. Millions now know it, and it helped me spread my message of hope. I had at last found the magic I was looking for in my words and in my work. I am Malala. I have always wished I could make the world a more peaceful place. And every day I work to make my wish come true. One child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world. One child, one book, one teacher, one pen can change the world. What a simple, humble, but profound and poignant message. I wonder what your magic pen will do.
Thank you, Dana, for that powerful story about Malala Yousafzai. One child, one teacher, one pen, one book can change the world. Each Sunday, we share our offering plate with a community organization in concert with our mission. Our offering reminds us that the act of giving is as essential to our spiritual well-being as anything else we do here on Sunday mornings. We are so grateful for the incredible generosity of our many members and friends throughout this time, both supporting Cedar Lane and the many community organizations that we partner with in service of our mission. Thank you for your generosity. Today, our Share the Plate offering will help support Kabul Tech, an Afghan organization for which Cedar Lane has hosted fundraising dinners for many years that benefited adult literacy classes for people living in extreme poverty. Funds raised today will be used for new programming serving Kabul Tech's members, supporting materials, and providing modest stipends to students. Mass will also be distributed to those living in extreme poverty in Afghanistan. As you know, COVID-19 is spreading rapidly there, with many residents living in close proximity to one another and lack of vaccination access. There are many ways to give. You may give by text or online or by PayPal or using your magic check and pen to write a very generous amount and mailing it to Cedar Lane, or dropping your check or gift in the offering plate on your way out. However you choose to give, we are grateful for your generous support. The Share the Plate offering will now be given. and gratefully received.
Each time we gather for worship, we set aside time to expand the caring ministry of this congregation. Together, we recognize the cycle of life and death, the circle of love, compassion, and witness that is at the heart of this religious community. Our hearts are with those whose primary spiritual practice is parenting during this pandemic. We hold in our circle of caring those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addiction, those who care for family members in ill health, and those who are experiencing job loss or financial insecurity. Within our Cedar Lane community, we celebrate with Candace, Haga, and family. Candace's brother in Colorado was finally able to return to his home after 4 months of being hospitalized after being hit and seriously injured by a car while riding his bicycle. He's continuing to recover at home. We hold in our hearts all who are mourning the loss of Bonnie Tyler. Bonnie's daughter, Beth, notified us that Bonnie passed on Wednesday, August 11th. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others whose lives are lost or impacted by violence and calamities in our nation as well as the world. We continue to hold in our hearts all who've died and those who are impacted by COVID-19. We hold the people of Louisiana in our hearts as they brace themselves for Hurricane Ida. We most especially hold the people of Afghanistan in our hearts. Let us hold the families of 13 U.S. service members and 60 Afghan civilians who lost their lives this week in Afghanistan. They are in our thoughts and our prayers. Let us also hold in our hearts the people of Haiti who are seeking to recover from multiple disasters. May these friends of ours, our companions in this world, and all that lives unspoken in our hearts be held in the embrace of prayer and by a love that will not let us go.
Holding all the joys and sorrows that were spoken and those that we continue to hold in our hearts and those that we shared in the chat, I invite us now to center ourselves for a time, bringing our mind, body, and spirit more fully into this space made sacred by our presence and the presence of the Holy, in which we live, move, breathe, and have our being. I invite you all to sit comfortably, allowing your attention to come gradually to your breath. The breath coming in and going all by itself, deep within your body. Take a few moments with yourself to allow the attention to gather within the even rhythm of your breath. Go deeper within. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. And as you turn gently within, begin to direct toward yourself, care for your own well-being. Look on yourself as though you are your only child. Have mercy on you. And silently in the heart, say, may I be well, calm, happy, healthy. May I be protected from harm. May I be free from suffering. May I be at peace. May I be well, calm, happy, healthy. May I be protected from harm. May I be free from suffering. May I be at peace. Now, as you continue to breathe in and breathe out, gently bring to mind someone for whom you have a feeling of warmth, love, and kindness. Perhaps a loved one, or a friend, or a teacher. Picture this loved one in your heart. And with each breath, whisper to them, may you be well, calm, happy, healthy. May you be protected from harm. May you be free from suffering. May you be peaceful. May you be well, calm, happy, healthy. May you be protected from harm. May you be free from suffering. May you be free. And as you sense them in your heart, sense this whole world that wishes so to be healed, to know its true nature, to be at peace. And in your heart, with your breath, whisper, may all beings be well, calm, happy, healthy. May all be free from suffering. May all be protected from harm. May all beings be at peace. Let your loving kindness radiate out to all beings as it did to your loved one, sensing all beings in need of healing, protection, in need of peace. May all beings be at peace. May they be free of suffering. Let the breath come softly. Let the breath go gently. May all beings be free of suffering. May all beings be protected from harm. May all beings be well, happy, healthy, peaceful. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. And as we continue in silence for a few moments, those who are mourning a loss or marking the anniversary of a loss are invited to rise in body or in spirit or post their names in the chat. Let us be in silence together. Before I begin, I just want to say how wonderful it is to be together again after 17 months of being apart yet connected. It is really a blessing to be together as a community. And I also want to say what a blessing it is to serve Cedar Lane and be given the freedom and the privilege of the pulpit, where we can speak our mind according to our conscience without any fear of being censored, castigated, or retribution. To speak words that may not be very popular at times, or go with the grain of what social ideas or opinions are, and still be able to do it, knowing that even if people disagree, they will do so with love and respect. It is truly a privilege. I mention this because almost 20 years ago, my predecessor, the Reverend Roger Fritz, witnessed against the war in Afghanistan, both here from the pulpit and on the streets. And many in this congregation joined with him in witnessing for that. And here we are, almost 20 years later. Almost 20 years ago, Representative Barbara Lee of California was the only member of Congress to vote against giving President Bush sweeping powers to wage an unlimited war on terror. Taking to the House floor 3 days after the attacks on 9/11, she said, "Let us step back for a moment and think through the implications of our actions today so that this does not spiral out of control. As we act, let us not become the evil that we deplore." And for her courageous vote, Representative Lee was called a traitor, a terrorist, and anti-American. She received hate mail and death threats for years. But through all of it, she never wavered in her conviction that she was on the right side of history. For the past 2 decades, she has continued to fight against the war and occupation, pestering each new president, Democrat and Republican, to end the war, and becoming a strong anti-war activist to bring our troops home. No one knows what course history would have taken if Lee's argument had carried the day. Because the next 2 decades have brought us wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Yemen, Kenya, and beyond, bringing death and destruction of hundreds of thousands of lives and livelihoods, economic and environmental devastation, and dispossession of millions of people. According to the Costs of War project at Brown University, America's post-9/11 wars have incurred obligations of over $6.4 trillion, cost hundreds of thousands of lives on all sides, and left hundreds of thousands of U.S. military personnel dead, or with severe physical wounds, or with traumatic brain injuries, or post-traumatic stress disorder, or deaths by suicide. And in Afghanistan, close to 70,000 Afghan soldiers and police have been killed, over 2,400 U.S. service members, and close to 4,000 U.S. contractors, and 50,000 Taliban and other opposition fighters have been killed. And when we include the journalists, aid workers, and NATO soldiers, at least 170,000 people have been killed overall. And the war displaced 2 million Afghans as refugees and 3.9 million people internally. That's about 15% of Afghanistan's population today, and nearly 30% of its pre-war population. Now let us take a moment to imagine if a country invaded the United States and 15% of the US population was forced from their homes. We're talking 50 million people, or everyone in the state of Florida and Texas combined. Now, while the U.S. does not bear all the responsibility for the destruction in Afghanistan, responsibility also lies with the U.S. allies, the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, and other foreign powers. Still, we bear overwhelming responsibility because the United States, under the Bush administration, chose to wage war on a country that had no role in the 9/11 attacks. So what is our moral responsibility, especially to the Afghan people? We must support people's efforts to leave the country to find safety or seek a better life. The Biden administration and Congress must welcome far more Afghans to the U.S. Compared to the almost 6 million displaced, granting special immigrant visas and refugee status to 104,000 represents a tiny first step. As American University professor David Vine wrote recently, we must resettle no fewer than 1 million Afghan refugees over the next 10 years. In the wake of our wars in Southeast Asia, we admitted more than 800,000 refugees fleeing Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. We owe a similar debt to the Afghans. And if the costs of this effort seem overwhelming, I submit that they pale in comparison to the $2.3 trillion spent on 20 years of war in Afghanistan and the grotesquely bloated Pentagon budget, which tops $700 billion annually. Congress could use the money saved by closing bases in Afghanistan to resettle Afghans and provide additional aid. President Biden inherited a war exacerbated by his predecessors. But that doesn't mean he has to follow their disastrous lead. Even at this late stage, it is possible to enact a bold plan that provides asylum to all Afghans in danger, especially the women and girls that the U.S. spent the last 20 years saying it deeply cared about. The Afghans who cannot or will not leave their country also must be supported. We have an obligation. We, the U.S. government, and us, the people, to repair the damage we inflicted. Second, we need an honest appraisal and discussion on our future relations with Afghanistan. While the forceful seizing of power by the Taliban must be opposed and condemned, and the real danger the Afghan population faces under this regime needs to be recognized, the U.S. and the international community need to find ways to engage with the Taliban to push for representative government and civil society rights in Afghanistan. Withdrawal needs to be followed up with greater multilateralism in the pursuit of a just and lasting peace. Thirdly, we need to engage in a national reflection on what went wrong in Afghanistan. This includes not just the Biden administration's failure to anticipate and prepare for the rapid fall of the Afghan government and the chaotic withdrawal that ensued, but also 2 decades of failed policies of multiple administrations. We should begin with 11 lessons learned reports from the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, which narrate the folly of American policies, the lies told by U.S. military and government officials, the corruption of the Afghan politicians and military, and the failure of our military and police training programs. The Washington Post dug into the interviews and documents behind these reports, and in December 2019 published the Afghanistan Papers, further exposing the history of failures. And those responsible for these failures must be held accountable. And we must also grapple with the real costs of war and reckon with the sins and self-deceptions of empire building. See, American efforts at empire building have been stuck in a place where, to use Polybius's words, it can neither endure its condition nor the means to overcome it. In the context of Afghanistan, strategic thinkers and talking heads of imperial privilege will fulminate over roads not taken. But these questions reenact the presumption of imperial omniscience, innocence, and power. There's a long litany of losses. The wars in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Somalia, Lebanon, the coups from Iran to Chile, the creation of secret instruments of violence in assorted places from Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala, Laos, Honduras, El Salvador, sanctuary to autocracies and exporters of violent fundamentalism from Saudi Arabia to Pakistan. If we ask the question, did our interventions leave a place in a better condition or achieve an objective with least violence possible? The answer most often turns out to be no. Columnist Banu Pratap Mehta writes about the 7 deadly sins of empire. The first, he writes, is corruption. Internally, he says, empire always empowers corrupt practices, the legions of lobbyists, arms dealers, hucksters who begin to constitute the secret sinews of the state and challenge the war booties and channel the war booties. Externally, the reliance on mercenaries, the sordid deals with all kinds of unsavory groups, the casual saturation with arms, the implication in illicit trade make empire resemble a gangster operation that has blowback on the state it represents. He's right. Corruption ensured both that our tax dollars were drained and no state. Afghanistan. The second sin is self-deception. From Vietnam to Afghanistan, we knew exactly what was going on, but the stakes in keeping the myth of imperial virtue, the myth of imperial innocence and imperial power produced the most extraordinary self-deceptions. The third is a morality that is committed to the very things it disavows. What does the rule of law mean when empire itself enacts a regular lawlessness? What does a humanitarian mission mean when it licenses an outsourcing of torture or disregard for civilian life? The fourth sin is continual expansionism. The omniscience of empire is apt to give every local conflict global significance, but it also needs perpetual war to remind the world of its resolve to remain preeminent. The fifth is hypocrisy. The more power tries to stretch, Mehta writes, the more it deploys double standards. He's right. While some hypocrisy is inevitable, necessary in politics, it becomes the defining feature through which the world understands imperial power. The sixth is a cult of violence. He says there is an abiding paradox in U.S. strategy that the creation of stable states and societies requires the purification and glorification of violence. He's right. From Iraq to Afghanistan to the drug wars to militarizing the police, our abiding legacy has been the saturation of societies with arms and militia, as if creating armed factions in society and militarizing the police will ever get us a stable and peaceful state. And the seventh sin is racism. Even the most liberal-minded empire, he says, will create a hierarchy of those whose lives matter more than others. For example, the tropes used to justify the mess of this withdrawal underscore this, that it is entirely the blame of the Afghan government and the army. As if after 20 years of intervening in a society, we have no responsibility. And suddenly, the pretext of common humanity and universal liberation, which was the pretext of empire, turned into the worst kind of cultural exceptionalism. It is their culture, their religion, those medieval tribalists who are incapable and therefore undeserving of liberty. We obscured the fact that they are entirely the creation of modern war. So where am I going with all this? There are no easy solutions in Afghanistan. And Presidents Joe Biden and Donald Trump were correct in pulling our troops out of Afghanistan. The critiques of how the Biden administration handled the withdrawal shouldn't be allowed to obscure the fact that the withdrawal was the right and overdue thing to do. So where do we go from here? In his 1967 Beyond Vietnam speech, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. pointed to how the giant triplets of racism, poverty, and militarism are intertwined and interrelated, and presciently warned of a time of endless war, when the U.S. would be trapped in one overseas entanglement after another, while the gap at home between the rich and the poor grew ever larger. He concluded his speech with these words, which to us is a good reminder and a call to action. He said, "We still have a choice today, nonviolent coexistence or violent co-annihilation. We must move past indecision to action. We must find new ways to speak for peace and justice throughout the developing world, a world that borders on our doors. Now let us begin. Now let us rededicate ourselves to the long and bitter but beautiful struggle for a new world. This is the calling of the children of God, and our siblings wait eagerly for our response. Shall we say the odds are too great? Shall we tell them the struggle is too hard? Or will there be another message? of longing, of hope, of solidarity with their yearnings, of commitment to their cause, whatever the cost. The choice is ours. And though we might prefer it otherwise, we must choose in this crucial moment of human history. And if we will only make the right choice, we will be able to transform this pending cosmic elegy into a creative psalm of peace. And if we will but make the right choice, we will be able to speed up the day all over America and all over the world when justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. So, friends, let us commit to put an end to this era of invasion, occupation, empire building, endless wars abroad, and militarism at home. Let us, in the words of Bishop William Barber, repent for our thinking, our believing, our insisting that bombs and missiles and drones and tanks could ever bring peace. And let us pray for God's forgiveness. Let us welcome refugees from Afghanistan and all the wars we created. And let us choose to transform this cosmic elegy, this cosmic tragedy, into a creative psalm of peace to hasten the day all over America and all over the world when justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. And to that, I say, Amen. 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 I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and sing loudly with your inside voices. Our closing hymn, number 134, Our World is One World. Those of you online, go for it.
Touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate we make, a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The way we spend, the way we share, who are the rich or poor, who stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many holes, but where our hearts can hear a different call.
Please remain as you are for our benediction, which are familiar words, the ancient Sanskrit prayer, which says, "May good befall all. May there be peace for all. May all be fit for excellence. May all experience that which is auspicious. May all be happy. May all be healthy. May all experience what is holy, and let no one suffer." Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu. Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu. Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah. Sarve Santu Niramayah. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Please be seated. Before we depart, I would like to thank my colleagues, the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin and Dana Edwards, for their support and contribution to our service. Thank you to our co-music coordinators, Dr. Jasmine Lee and Jenny Lynn Moyer, the Cedar Lane Quartet, and the virtual choir production team led by Kevin Miller, to Elsie Town and Julia Alter and the Cedar Lane Choir with our Minister Emeritus Henry Segrishi, and my soul brother Farid Johnson for the inspiring music that enriched, nurtured, and enlivened today's service. Thank you to our membership, staff, and pastoral volunteers who have been active here and also online in the live chat. Thank you to Rebecca Noctree for those gorgeous in-gathering sites that included those visuals from Afghanistan, and a very, very special note of gratitude to our incredible and amazing AV team. Nicole Kazi, Barb Thompson, Todd Chernikoff, Mike Morse, and Michael McRickard, who truly moved mountains to make today's service happen. Thank you. And to all our friends, fans, and members, please join us with your favorite beverage for a virtual coffee hour right after this service. The URL for the virtual coffee hour will be posted in the YouTube chat. And please join us again next Sunday at 11 a.m. as Reverend Katie Romano Griffin and the DC Labor Chorus join together for a very special Labor Day service. Thank you for being here today, here and online. Many blessings on the journey. Thank you.
We're on holy ground, right where we are. We're on holy ground, under these shining stars. We're on holy ground, when we reach for each other with our hearts. We're on holy ground. If life is a journey between birth and death, then every step we take matters with every breath. And each path we follow leads us somewhere or to someone to walk beside. We're on holy ground, right where we are. We're on holy ground, under these shining stars, we're on holy ground. When we reach for each other with our hearts, we're on holy ground. If we are all pilgrims between here and there, then everyone we meet matters each day we share. And no one's a stranger, just a brother or a sister we didn't know. We're on holy ground, right where we are. We're on holy ground, under these shining stars. We're on holy ground. When we reach for each other with our hearts, we're on holy ground. If there is a heaven beyond earth and sky, it's made of moments here that matter with you and I. There's no destination more full of grace than this place we meet again. We're on holy ground, right where we are. We're on holy ground, under these shining stars.